At the end of this video, you'll find out if you're a cheap person or someone around you is. And as you watch the video, do not confuse being frugal with being cheap. You may ask yourself, isn't that the same thing? The answer is no. So, how do you spot a cheap person? 1. They never go out anywhere nice. Do not look at your friend who always declines going out and mistake them for a cheap person. Maybe they're just introverted, or maybe they're trying to budget and balance their finances. However, there is a group of people that will never consider visiting a place simply because it's fancy. And these are the people we like to call cheap. Cheap people do not condone the idea of visiting fancy places. For example, they'd always suggest a local dinner to save a couple of bucks. New experiences are off the menu because they would rather continue with experiencing something familiar. This advice is not about you visiting fancy places more often than you can afford. Neither is it about going to fancy places often, but every once in a while. It's great to treat yourself to places where the menus aren't covered in plastic. And if eating out at fancy restaurants is not your thing, you can try a classy venue such as an art gallery or a wine tasting experience. 2. Cheap people spend more time counting their money than spending it. Okay, if you grew up watching shows like Everybody Hates Chris, you remember Chris's father as someone who would count his money to the last coin. Memes have been made about having the urge to spend money on unnecessary things and resonated with Chris's father's spending philosophy. Just remember that hoarding petty cash is a common habit among cheap people. They tend to linger onto what they have and try to figure out ways on how to secure it before the next bill arises. Cheap people can spend hours and hours counting how much they have rather than spending it. Unlike wealthy people who focus on making more, a cheap person lingers onto what they have. If you're obsessed with knowing how much money you have all the time, chances are you are cheap. Release yourself from this trap and figure out ways of increasing your income. 3. They're willing to compromise on quality to save money. As I said, cheap people do not like the idea of spending money and would rather hold on to the little they have just to satisfy themselves. With this in mind, it comes as no surprise what lengths a cheap person would go just to save some money. Cheap people prioritize spending less, while still willing to sacrifice quality, value, and time to cash in on some short-term savings. It's more like a fear of spending money. If you're familiar with the show Cheapskates, some of these people go to the extreme extent of buying expired food and products because they get them at throwaway prices, or even free sometimes. They will disregard the implications of such items on their health, as long as they can see some money left. Unlike frugal folks who are resourceful and will prioritize spending on things they really care about, cheap people don't care much. They just don't want to spend, period. 4. They reuse tea bags. Disclaimer: if you do it once or twice, it's okay. You can get away with it. Maybe you bluntly didn't know and we get it. A tea bag can go a long way. But if you make it a habit or stack a pile up for the next brew, you're indeed cheap. Tea bags are considered to be affordable and an easy, quick fix alternative for expensive coffee. So do not embarrass yourself in front of people with such a cheap habit. 5. Skip meals intentionally to save money. Not everyone can afford a good meal, but some simply are too cheap to buy a decent one. Not because they cannot afford it, they just do not see the necessity of eating so much. Cheap people eat less because, let's face it, food costs money, and why spend it? They only spend the minimum to keep themselves alive. They will always come up with an excuse as to why they cannot eat, and they do anything to save a dollar. 6. They always have an excuse for not having enough cash. Cheap people always seem to have an excuse about not having enough cash on them. Most times they come up with stuff like they forgot their wallets, or even lie that they spent all their salary. And you and I know where they're heading with this. The truth is, it's all a lie. If you ask yourself the real question, when exactly did they get to spend this money that they constantly do not have? Coming from someone who doesn't like to spend money, cheap people supposedly spend a lot. 7. Cheap people tend to make spending mistakes. If mistakes were a norm, then cheap people would be used to it by now. Cheap people are always complaining about their purchase decisions. I mean, what do they expect after compromising on quality like that? The sad part is that they won't be replacing it either, because, well, they're cheap like that. 8. dwells on what something costs. It's okay to be cautious about splurging on things, but cheap people make other people extremely uncomfortable because they dwell on how much something costs constantly. They'll even make a song out of it. Every purchase is not based on need and value, but rather on cost. If you're ever in a situation where you want to con a cheap friend, show them a knockoff of something and lie about how much money would save them buying it from you. 9. They let you pay almost every single time. Cheap people will avoid spending at all costs, so if you hang around one, you'll notice they always push the bill to you. Do not confuse broke people with cheap people. Maybe your friend or partner is just under the weather during a rainy season, so do not call them cheap. Cheap people, however, do not shy away from avoiding bills. They will always push the bill to you. Not only that, but they also try to split every bill to the last coin no matter the situation. And if you were wondering, it does not matter if they earn more than you do. They will still insist you pay. 10. Cheap people don't allow themselves to have hobbies. Okay, in my opinion, this is actually quite sad. Cheap people will go to the extent of depriving themselves of their hobbies so as to avoid spending money. You may ask yourself, why would anyone on earth do this? Well, a cheap person would. A hobby as simple as cycling sounds like a tasking sport because they do not want to buy or hire a bicycle. Guilty pleasures such as cooking, which could be therapeutic, are also off the table because they can survive on the bare minimum. If you know anyone bringing up excuses not to partake in their hobbies, chances are that they are cheap. Well guys, there you have it. 10 signs someone is cheap. If you agree or disagree with any of the points, let us know. And if you enjoyed the video, do give it a thumbs up. With that said, have a great day and see you in the next one.